Welcome to my channel. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. I think we should just leave it. Why Alan Ritchson was told not to reach out to Tom Cruise about his Reacher role. Reacher has been an enormous success for Amazon, bringing the world of Lee Child's popular novels to the screen in constantly fresh and interesting ways, but it's not the first time this adaptation has been attempted. The books were first turned into movies starring Tom Cruise in the titular role, despite lots of backlash surrounding the Hollywood actor's unconventional casting. Thankfully, the television version has been much more widely accepted as the better adaptation. There are many shows like Reacher, but few that quite capture the same intensity. Despite the mixed reception of Cruise's Jack Reacher movies, there's still a lot of fondness for the actor within the fandom. He was easily the best part of those movies, and his take on the character was intentionally different from Child's vision in order to give the franchise a new dimension. Unfortunately, this didn't quite land with audiences, but the movies still got a lot right about Cruise's Jack Reacher. For this reason, many have questioned whether Cruise had any input on the Amazon series, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Alan Ritchson was told that Tom Cruise had moved on already from Reacher as a sign of respect towards Cruise for his work on the movies. Lead actor Alan Ritchson decided to write him a letter thanking him for what he did for the brand of Reacher. Speaking with Slash Film, Ritchson admitted, "I just felt it was the respectful thing to do." The actor wanted to give Cruise the credit that he was never really given for his on-screen work as Jack Reacher before taking over the role. "Say what you want about whether he was right for Reacher or not," Ritchson argued. "Most people know about Reacher because of Mr. Cruise." However, Ritchson was informed by producer Don Granger that Cruise wanted to move on from the project, and he'd already given his blessing to the new show. This definitely makes sense given the negative reaction that he faced after his own Jack Reacher movies. It's likely that the star wanted to put some space between himself and the new adaptation. In some ways, Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher movies didn't work, and he clearly wanted to move on to something else. Alan Ritchson eventually delivered his Reacher letter to Tom Cruise. Ultimately, Ritchson ended up telling Cruise everything he wanted to share with him anyway, using Jimmy Kimmel Live as the conduit for his letter. Although he was advised not to bother Cruise with his self-described heartfelt note, the actor still expressed his admiration for Cruise during his late-night interview. "We would not have the series that we have without Tom Cruise," Ritchson said. "I'm super grateful for him passing the baton to me on Reacher and helping it become what it's become with the eyes that he brought to the show." Joking about the nature of his letter, Ritchson also admitted that there were a few "I love yous" in the letter that he wouldn't include in his late-night address, which proves just how much admiration and goodwill there is between the two actors. Tom Cruise has always championed projects like Reacher to do well regardless of his own experience adapting the books, so it's no surprise that Ritchson felt so bound to thank him for his service. And it's true. Without those movies, Reacher probably would not be such an enormous success. Now, Alan Ritchson's Jack Reacher show is different from Tom Cruise's movies, although they're both adapted from the same works. There are several key differences between the Jack Reacher movies and the show. For starters, the movies were much more sensationalized than Lee Child's novels ever were. The stakes were much higher, and Cruise's performance made everything feel much more dramatic, whereas Reacher is more gritty and grounded in reality. This was a key criticism of the movies, as it caused them to drift far away from the spirit of the books. But that's something that Reacher has swiftly rectified. When actor Alan Ritchson was cast as the new face of Jack Reacher, the fan-favorite character from Lee Child's best-selling novels, he found himself stepping into some very large shoes, those once worn by none other than Tom Cruise. Cruise had already played Reacher in two films, Jack Reacher, 2012, and Jack Reacher, Never Go Back, 2016, both of which brought global attention to the mysterious ex-military policeman turned drifter and vigilante. However, when it came time for Ritchson to take on the role for the Amazon Prime series Reacher, he was told not to reach out to the superstar for advice. This instruction reveals a fascinating tension between maintaining the legacy of a well-known character while simultaneously making space for a fresh interpretation. Ritchson's portrayal of Reacher, which premiered in 2022, was critically acclaimed and warmly received by fans of the books. His towering frame and rugged, no-nonsense demeanor embodied the Reacher that readers had always imagined, someone who looked every bit the part of the 6'5" brick house that author Lee Child described in his novels. By contrast, Cruise, who is significantly shorter and of slighter build, had been an unexpected choice for many fans. Despite this initial pushback, Cruise brought his signature intensity and charisma to the role, winning over a segment of the audience with his version of Reacher. But as Ritchson prepared to take over the character, he had questions. It's understandable why he might have considered reaching out to Cruise for guidance. After all, Cruise is one of the most successful action stars in Hollywood, and his experience playing Reacher twice meant he had insight into the character's complexities and quirks. However, Ritchson was advised by the showrunners and producers to avoid making that call. In an interview, Ritchson recalled this conversation. "I asked about reaching out to Cruise, and the response was basically, I think we should just leave it." The reasoning behind this directive wasn't an issue of hostility or competition. Rather, it was about preserving the creative distance between the two versions of Reacher, allowing Ritchson to fully embrace his interpretation without being unduly influenced by Cruise's portrayal. The new series was meant to be its own beast, and the team wanted to ensure that Ritchson could put his personal stamp on the character. The decision not to seek Cruise's input was also likely influenced by the fundamental differences between the two Reachers. While Cruise's films were action-packed blockbusters, the Amazon series took a slower, more deliberate approach. It focused more on the character's inner world, his stoic demeanor, and his sharp investigative mind. This was a return to the source material, offering a version of Reacher that hewed more closely to what longtime fans of the books had been asking for. Ritchson's Reacher is not only physically imposing but also intelligent, strategic, and emotionally reserved in a way that contrasts with Cruise's high-octane energy. The two portrayals are different enough that it would have been difficult for Ritchson to borrow from Cruise without muddying the waters. Ritchson acknowledged that he was aware of the pressure that came with taking on such a beloved role. "I was very aware of the shadow that Tom Cruise casts, and it's a big one," he said in an interview. "He's one of the greatest action stars of all time, and his movies were successful in their own right. But I had to trust that my version of Reacher was going to resonate in a different way." Interestingly, Ritchson wasn't the only one thinking about the Cruise comparison. Lee Child, the author of the Reacher novels, was vocal about his support for both actors. While Child defended the choice of Cruise for the films, praising the actor's dedication to the role, he also expressed excitement about Ritchson's casting. Child recognized that Ritchson's physicality more closely aligned with the character he had written, and he appreciated the depth that Ritchson brought to the role in the series. By supporting both versions, Child helped diffuse some of the tension that could have arisen from having two wildly different Reachers in the public consciousness. Ultimately, Ritchson's decision not to consult Cruise proved to be the right one. His portrayal of Jack Reacher was widely praised for being faithful to the books, while also standing on its own merits. The series received high marks for its character-driven storytelling and attention to detail, and Ritchson's Reacher was seen as a more grounded, gritty version of the character. The message behind the advice to just leave it wasn't about rejecting what came before.